Hi everyone, we're on location today. We're in a farmer's field and the reason is that I thought it would be really good to tell this story from a farmer's field because it is all about sowing seeds and harvesting crops, and it's all about a farmer. And this is exactly what happens. Although the techniques of farming are a little bit different today, it's still basically the same. They plant seeds in the soil and the crops grow up and they harvest them, and the cycle of the year sort of continues. That's the same that used to happen in Jesus' day, even though in those days they didn't have farming machines like tractors and everything. They did everything by hand. It's very similar today. And that's what this story is about. It's called the parable of the weeds. And Jesus told this story. He said, one day a farmer went out to sow seeds, like they do. And I saw that happening in this field a few months ago. I saw them come and ploughing the field. They turned it up. They made it a beautiful kind of nice, even surface to plant seeds in and ready for the ground to have seeds. And then they came along with the machine to plant the seeds, to scatter the seeds on the ground. And then the seeds began to grow, and that's what's happened here. You can see now that there are crops, and that there are lots and lots of crops which are growing and will be soon ready to be harvested. But Jesus said one time that his servants, the farmer's servants, came to him and they said, "Sir, we can see weeds growing. How did the weeds grow in the field? Didn't you plant good seed?" Because the farmer only planted the best quality seed, of course. He didn't plant weeds. Who would want to plant weeds? And yet they said, "You've got weeds growing in the field, and I can see a few weeds growing here, in this field here." It's difficult to stop weeds growing, but presumably this field must have had loads of them growing all over the place. Well, the farmer said an enemy must have done this. Someone must have come and done this deliberately, because this is not natural. What's happened is that amongst all the good seed I planted, someone has put in weeds, and someone has put in things which are not right, which you wouldn't want to eat. And the servants say, "Well, what should we do?" The farmer said, "Well, don't pull up the weeds, because if you pull up the weeds, if you yank them out, you might also get rid of the good plants as well. You might also get rid of the wheat. So instead, leave them together. Leave them both growing until it's harvest time. And then when it's harvest time, then we can go in with the combine harvester or whatever it is, and we will gather up the wheat and we can separate them then, because the wheat will have grown properly. And then that will be the time to separate them, so we won't lose any of the good wheat which we planted." So that's what Jesus said they ought to do. Leave them growing together until it was time for the harvest. And Jesus explained this parable. He said that that's a bit like what the kingdom of God is like. He said that although at the moment there are, people who do wicked things, and there's still evil in the world, and that is the case at the moment. But one day, he said, he will send his angels. God will send his angels, and all of the wickedness and sin in the world will be taken away, and only those who believe and trust in Jesus will be with God forever, and will be in that perfect world where there's no sin or anything bad anymore. It will only be good. And at the moment, there's still good and evil in the world together, sort of mixed together, like the good crops and the bad crops. But one day, Jesus said, it will be the case that only the good will be left, only the ones who believe and trust in Jesus. So that's the message of the parable. Well, I hope that you've enjoyed this story today and seeing the crops growing and seeing that there are some weeds in this field. But, one day when the farmer comes to harvest it, and I'm sure it will be soon, there will just be the good crops left, and he'll get rid of all of the weeds. And that's the good lesson for us to think about for Jesus' parable today.